Here's what the Encyclopedia Galactica has to say about alcohol. It says that alcohol is a colourless volatile liquid formed by the fermentation of sugars, and also notes its intoxicating effect on certain carbon-based life forms. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy also mentions alcohol. It says that the best drink in existence is the Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster. It says that the effect of drinking a Pan-Galactic Gargle Blaster is the same as having your brain smashed out by a slice of lemon wrapped around a large gold brick. The guide also tells you on which planets the best Pan-Galactic Gargle Blasters are mixed, how much you can expect to pay for one, and what voluntary organisations exist to help you rehabilitate afterwards. The guide even tells you how you can mix one yourself. Take the juice for 1 bottle of Old Jank Spirit, it says. Pour it into 1 measure of water from the seas of Santragenius 5. Oh, that Santragenian sea water, it says. Oh, those Santragenian fish. Allow 3 cubes of Arcturian Mega Gin to melt into the mixture. It must be properly iced or the benzene is lost. Allow 4 litres of Falian marsh gas to bubble through it, in memory of all those happy hikers who have died of pleasure in the marshes of Falia. Over the back of a silver spoon float a measure of qualactin hypermint extract, redolent of all the heady odours of the dark qualactin zones, subtle, sweet and mystic. Drop in the tooth of an Algolian sun tiger. Watch it dissolve, spreading the fires of the Algolian suns deep into the heart of the drink. Sprinkle Zamphor, add an olive, drink, but very carefully. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy sells rather better than the Encyclopedia Galactica.
6 pints of bitter,
said Ford Prefect to the barman of the Horse and Groom.
And quickly, please, the world's about to end.
The barman of the Horse and Groom didn't deserve this sort of treatment. He was a dignified old man. He pushed his glasses up his nose and blinked at Ford Prefect. Ford ignored him and stared out of the window, so the barman looked instead at Arthur, who shrugged helplessly and said nothing. So the barman said,
"Oh, yes, sir. Nice weather, fella,"
and started pulling pints. He tried again.
"Going to watch the match this afternoon, then?"
Ford glanced round at him. No point, he said, and looked back out of the window.
"What's that foregone conclusion, then, you reckon, sir?"
said the barman.
"Arsenal without a chance."
No, said Ford.
It's just that the world's about to end.
"Oh, yes, sir. So you said,"
said the barman, looking over his glasses, this time at Arthur.
"Lucky escape for Arsenal if it did."
Ford looked back at him, genuinely surprised.
No, not really,
he said. He frowned. The barman breathed heavily.
"There you go, six pints,"
he said. Arthur smiled at him wanly and shrugged again. He turned and smiled wanly at the rest of the pub, just in case any of them had heard what was going on. None of them had, and none of them could understand what he was smiling at them for. A man sitting next to Ford at the bar looked at the 2 men, looked at the 6 pints, did a swift burst of mental arithmetic, arrived at the answer he liked, and grinned a stupid, hopeful grin at them.
"Get off,"
said Ford.
"They're ours."
Giving him a look that would have made an Algolian sun tiger get on with what it was doing. Ford slapped a £5 note on the bar. He said,
"Keep the change." "What, from a fiver?" "Thank you, sir. You've got 10 minutes left to spend it."
The barman decided simply to walk away for a bit. "Ford," said Arthur, "would you please tell me what the hell is going on?"
"Drink up,"
said Ford.
"You've got 3 pints to get through."
3 pints? said Arthur.
"At lunchtime?"
The man next to Ford grinned and nodded happily. Ford ignored him. He said,
"Time is an illusion. Lunchtime, doubly so."
You should send that into Reader's Digest. They have a page for people like you. Why 3 pints all of a sudden?
Muscle relaxant. You'll need it.
Muscle relaxant?
Muscle relaxant.
Arthur stared into his beer. Did I do anything wrong today? Or has the world always been like this and I've just been too wrapped up in myself to notice?
All right, said Ford. I'll try to explain. How long have we known each other?
How long? Arthur thought. About 5 years, maybe 6, he said. Most of it seemed to make some kind of sense at the time.
All right, how would you react if I said I'm not from Guildford after all, but from a small planet somewhere in the vicinity of Beetlejuice?
Arthur shrugged in a so-so sort of way. I don't know, he said, taking a pull of beer. Why do you think it's the sort of thing you're likely to say? Ford gave up. It really wasn't worth bothering at the moment, what with the world being about to end. He just said,
Drink up.
He added perfectly factually,
The world's about to end.
Arthur gave the rest of the pub another wan smile. The rest of the pub frowned at him. A man waved at him to stop smiling at them and mind his own business. This must be Thursday, said Arthur to himself, sinking low over his beer. I never could get the hang of Thursdays. Chapter 3. On this particular Thursday, something was moving quietly through the ionosphere many miles above the surface of the planet. Several somethings, in fact. Several dozen huge, yellow, chunky, slab-like somethings. Huge as office blocks, silent as birds. They soared with ease, basking in electromagnetic rays from the star Sol, biding their time, grouping, preparing. The planet beneath them was almost perfectly oblivious to their presence, which was just how they wanted it for the moment. The huge yellow somethings went unnoticed at Goonhilly. They passed over Cape Canaveral without a blip. Woomera and Jodrell Bank looked straight through them, which was a pity because it was exactly the sort of thing they'd been looking for all these years. The only place they registered at all was on a small black device called a sub-etha sensomatic, which winked away quietly to itself. It nestled in the darkness inside a leather satchel which Ford Prefect habitually wore slung around his neck. The contents of Ford Prefect's satchel were quite interesting, in fact, and would have made any Earth physicist's eyes pop out of his head. Which is why he always concealed them by keeping a couple of dog-eared scripts for plays he pretended he was auditioning for stuffed in the top. Besides the sub-eta sensomatic and the scripts, he had an electronic thumb, a short, squat black rod, smooth and matte, with a couple of flat switches and dials at one end, which looked rather like a largish electronic calculator. This had about 100 tiny flat-press buttons and a screen about 4 inches square on which any of 1,000,000 pages could be summoned at a moment's notice. It looked insanely complicated, and this was one of the reasons why the snug plastic cover it fitted into had the words "Don't Panic" printed on it in large friendly letters. The other reason was that this device was in fact the most remarkable of all books ever to come out of the great publishing corporations of Ursa Minor, The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. The reason why it was published in the form of a micro-submersional electronic component is that if it were printed in normal book form, an interstellar hitchhiker would require several inconveniently large buildings to carry it around in. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy has a few things to say on the subject of towels. A towel, it says, is about the most massively useful thing an interstellar hitchhiker can have. Partly, it has great practical value. You can wrap it around you for warmth as you bound across the cold moons of Jaglan Beta. You can lie in it on the brilliant marble-sanded beaches of Santrigenus 5, inhaling the heady sea vapours. You can sleep underneath it, beneath the stars which shine so redly on the desert world of Kakrafoon. Use it to sail a mini raft down the slow, heavy river of Moth. Wet it for use in hand-to-hand combat. Wrap it around your head to ward off noxious fumes. Or avoid the gaze of the ravenous bloodbatter beast of Troll. A mind-bogglingly stupid animal, it assumes that if you can't see it, it can't see you. daft as a brush, but very ravenous. You can wave your towel in emergencies as a distress signal, and of course, dry yourself off with it if it still seems to be clean enough. More importantly, a towel has immense psychological value. For some reason, if a strag being a non-hitchhiker, discovers that a hitchhiker has his towel with him, he will automatically assume that he is also in possession of a toothbrush, face flannel, soap, tin of biscuits, flask, compass, map, ball of string, gnat spray, wet weather gear, spacesuit, etc., etc. Furthermore, the strag will happily lend the hitchhiker any of these or a dozen other items that the hitchhiker might have accidentally lost. What the strag will think is that any man who can hitch the length and breadth of the galaxy, rough it, slum it, struggle against terrible odds, win through, and still know where his towel is clearly a man to be reckoned with. Hence a phrase which has passed into hitchhiking slang, as in,
Hey, you sass that hoopy fort prefect? There's a fruit who really knows where his towel is.
sass, to know or be aware of, meet, have sex with. Hoopy, really together guy. Frood, meaning really amazingly together guy. Nestling quietly on top of the towel in Ford Prefect's satchel, the sub-Eta sensomatic began to wink more quickly. Miles above the surface of the planet, the huge yellow somethings began to fan out.
You got that towel with you?
Said Ford suddenly to Arthur. Arthur, struggling through his third pint, looked around at him. Why, what? No. Should I have? He had given up on being surprised. There didn't seem to be any point any longer. Ford clicked his tongue in irritation. At that moment, the dull sound of a rumbling crash from outside filtered through the low murmur of the pub, through the sound of the jukebox, through the sound of the man next to Ford hiccuping over the whiskey Ford had eventually bought him. Arthur choked on his beer, leapt to his feet.
What's that?
He yelped.
Don't worry, said Ford. They haven't started yet.
Thank God for that, said Arthur, and relaxed.
That's probably just your house being knocked down,
said Ford, downing his last pint.